We all have that favorite park, right? That little slice of green in the city that just feels like it belongs to everyone. Well, for Amsterdam, that place is the Vondelpark. And on the surface, it looks like the perfect public space. But today, we're going to peel back the layers and ask a much tougher question. What does public even mean? And who is that space really for?
First, just take in the sheer scale of this place. Vondelpark is massive. At 47 hectares, people call it Amsterdam's green living room. And with over 12 million visitors a year, it's one of the most popular spots in the entire country. On any given day, it's like a perfect postcard of city life. You've got picnics, joggers, tourists, locals, all sharing the same space. Or at least that's how it looks.
So let's start with the story everybody knows. The official history of this amazing green oasis, this place that really feels like it's part of the city's soul.
The park's backstory is actually a pretty fascinating journey. It kicked off way back in 1864, but get this, it wasn't a public project. It was a private park started by a group of wealthy citizens. A few years later, it gets its famous name after they install a statue of the poet Joost van den Vondel. But the real game changer happens in 1953, when it's sold to the city for just a single guilder, making it officially public. And by 1996, it's so beloved it's declared a national monument. Talk about a journey from a private club to a public icon.
And this place is just packed with cool stuff. There's an open-air theater with free shows in the summer, these beautiful winding paths, a gorgeous rose garden, plenty of spots to grab a coffee. But honestly, the most mind-blowing feature has got to be that last one on the list.
Yeah, you heard that right. A real deal Picasso just sitting right there in the park. The sculpture was actually a gift from the artist himself back in 1965 for the park's 100th anniversary. And that right there just goes to show you how much cultural weight Vondelpark carries. It's so much more than just grass and trees. It's a living, breathing cultural institution.
Okay, so we've painted this perfect picture, right? A beautiful, historic, culturally rich park that everybody loves. But now, we're going to flip the script, because the story of Vondelpark is the perfect way into a much bigger and way more complicated conversation.
So what does it actually mean for a space to be public? Seriously, who gets to define that? And more importantly, who gets to feel like they truly, genuinely belong there? This is where our nice, comfortable stories starts to get a little messy.
For a long, long time, our idea of public space came from concepts like the public sphere. It's a term from the philosopher Jürgen Habermas, and he basically imagined this ideal space where people could gather and debate important issues. But here's the catch. In his original idea, that public was really just the educated, property-owning upper class, not exactly everybody. And more modern thinkers, like the art historian Rosalind Deutsche, have really pushed back on this rosy picture. She basically argues that the very idea of public space can be twisted and used to justify exclusion and control. In other words, just calling a space public doesn't magically make it open and democratic for every single person who walks into it.
And this brings us to the park's hidden rules. The unspoken, unwritten codes that are literally built into its design. Codes that tell you who belongs, how you're supposed to act, and ultimately, who's in charge.
And here is the absolute key idea. No public space is neutral. Ever. Every single bench, every pathway, every streetlight is the result of a decision. And all those little design decisions have real social and psychological effects on us, shaping our experiences in ways we might not even consciously realize.
So let's circle back to Vondelpark's origins. The ideal, the story they told, was that it was for the health and relaxation of all Amsterdammers. But when you dig into the history, a different picture emerges. It was really part of what some historians call a civilizing offensive, a way for the upper class to kind of manage and control the behavior of the poorer city dwellers. That original intention is baked right into the park's DNA. And that feeling of being managed or watched, it's still there today. A recent study on the park included this quote from someone who described this weird feeling of being under surveillance. Not from cameras, but from other people in the park. It's a subtle, but really powerful kind of social control.
Another person in the study pointed out how certain groups can just take over a space with their behavior. Academics have a word for this. They call it territorialization. Think about it. A group blasting music, taking over a huge patch of lawn, it sends a clear, unspoken message to everyone else. This spot is ours now. And just like that, The space isn't equally available to everyone anymore.
So all of this leads us to this central, tricky paradox that's built right into the design of most public spaces, and it all boils down to one simple thing: visibility.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. This slide shows how a tiny design choice, literally just which way a bench is facing, can totally change how someone experiences a space, especially for people who are trans and gender diverse. It seems like such a small detail, but the implications are huge.
So let's break it down. Think about your average park bench. In Vondelpark and in tons of other parks, they're set up to face outwards, looking onto the main busy paths. This design basically forces you to make eye contact with a constant stream of strangers. It also means your back is completely exposed. Sure, this design maximizes visibility, but it also maximizes vulnerability for anyone who feels like they might be a target of unwanted stares or comments.
And the effect this has is very real. That same study found that this constant feeling of being exposed makes people from marginalized groups change how they act. They feel this pressure to constantly compose themselves, to monitor their own actions, their posture, their appearance, all to avoid drawing the wrong kind of attention. I mean, that is the exact opposite of relaxation.
And this gets us right to the heart of the paradox. The very same design feature that's meant to create safety, what the famous urbanist Jane Jacobs called eyes on the street, can feel like being under a harsh, stressful spotlight for someone else. What feels safe for one person can feel deeply, profoundly unsafe for another.
So where does that leave us? What do we do with this information? Well, it's all about learning to see the world around us, our own cities, in a completely new light.
Because, look, this whole conversation isn't really just about one park in Amsterdam. It's about every single public space you walk through every day. Every plaza, every street corner. They are all the products of countless tiny design decisions, and each one has its own built-in assumptions about who's supposed to be there and how they're supposed to behave.
So next time you're out and about, try this little exercise. First, think about the history. Who built this place? And who did they really build it for? Second, just look at the benches. Which way do they face? And more importantly, who actually looks comfortable and relaxed sitting on them? And finally, ask yourself this one simple question. In this space, who is being made visible and who is being allowed to stay hidden?
Public spaces don't just happen by accident. They are designed. They can be designed to exclude, to control, and to make people feel constantly watched. But, and this is the hopeful part, they can also be designed to be welcoming, to be safe, and to be truly public for everyone. Which leaves us with one final question. What if we actually started designing them that way?